Please welcome back Chris Jordan. Thanks, Chris. Good to see you.
About a year ago, I first learned of a phenomenon that's been mentioned a few times already today, and that is the Pacific Garbage Patch. And the first thing I heard about it was that it's a floating pile of trash twice the size of the state of Texas. And I imagined horizon to horizon floating garbage. And with a mixture of horror and delight, I imagined going out and photographing it, because it's exactly the kind of stuff I love photographing. And I learned pretty quickly when I started researching and linking up with people who are activists about plastic pollution that it's actually much scarier than that. The plastic out there is underwater, mostly. It's not visible on the surface. If you sail to the middle of the garbage patch, all you see is the great open blue Pacific. And most of the plastic out there, which has been estimated to be at least several million tons, has broken down into tiny little pieces. And many of those pieces have broken down so small that they're molecules of plastic, which, as molecules go, are huge. They're about the same size as plankton. And scientists who are going out to the Pacific Garbage Patch are dropping water sampling devices in this incredibly remote place, basically in the middle of the world's largest open expanse of water, and bringing back water samples and measuring the amount of plastic versus the amount of plankton, and they're discovering that there's 6 times more plastic particles than there are phytoplankton in the remotest oceanic waters on Earth. And so I got interested in this. It's one of those issues that I'm fascinated by because it's invisible. There's nowhere you can go and see it and experience it with your senses. Yet it may be an incredibly important environmental issue that the whole world is going to have to work on over the next few decades. And if we can't feel anything about it, if we can't experience it except by statistics, then it's really hard to get engaged with it. And so I wanted to do a piece. So guys, are my slides keyed there? There we go. So this is in the series that I call Running the Numbers, that you guys may know. I make these huge digital images of the things we waste. And the way I made this one is I went and got lots and lots of plastic from the laboratory of Captain Charles Moore of the Algalita Foundation. He's the kind of heroic figure that's been going out to the patch for about 10 years now. He's the person who's credited with discovering and naming it. And what he does is he goes out with these nets and he actually collects plastic from the ocean waters and brings it back and analyzes it. And so he sent me a large quantity of plastic to my studio in Seattle, and I used it to build an image. So right now we're up very, very close to a huge image that's not quite the size of this screen, but almost. And we're going to slowly zoom back. You can see there's a comb, there's bottle caps, there's pieces of fishing line, more bottle caps over there, some pen caps. Zooming back a little bit further, you can see that it's in the shape of a mountain. There's a flip-flop sandal up there at the top. This is all actual plastic that came from the Pacific Ocean. Zooming back a little bit further, and finally all the way back, this is made from 2.4 million pieces of oceanic plastic pollution, which is equal to the number of pounds of plastic that enter the world's oceans every hour. And it's an estimate. And I was recently talking to a marine scientist who's an expert on this particular subject, and he told me that he's sorry to tell me that my estimate is possibly off by about 90%. And I thought, oh, geez, that means I grossly over-exaggerated. And he said, no, in the other direction. And so this may represent the minimum amount of plastic that's entering the world's oceans. And it's coming out our rivers, it's being dumped. The companies that claim to be recycling our plastic, there are whistleblowers who are beginning to tell us that it isn't being recycled at all, it's being dumped in our oceans, out where no one can track it. That's one reason I'm really interested to talk to you. And so we have this enormous, frightening problem of plastic pollution out in our oceans, and biologists are only just beginning to start to learn about the effect that it's having on the marine environment. And one of the things that I began to learn about when I started meeting with marine scientists and really researching this issue is the effect on wildlife. And in particular, I got to meet the scientist Wallace J. Nichols, who's one of the world's leading experts on sea turtles. And he showed me these horrific photographs of sea turtles that have eaten plastic bags and now have them trailing out from behind their body. And meeting with other marine scientists who've been finding plastic inside of whales and seals and all kinds of fish. And part of that process was that I learned this bizarre phenomenon that's happening on a place called Midway Island in the very middle of the Pacific Ocean. And Midway Island is near the place where is the middle of the gyre. The gyre is that big circular current that's going in the Pacific. And Midway Island is pretty close to the middle of it. And I have a slide. Let's see, we need to go forward two. One, there we go. So there's the North Pacific. It's the world's largest body of water. And Midway Atoll, you can't see it, but that arrow points to where it is. It's a speck out there. It's this tiny, tiny island that is, by at least by the measure of being the furthest from any continent, it's one of the remotest places on Earth. It's, I think it's almost 3,000 miles from the coast of California. It's another more than 3,000 miles to China and Asia. It's Australia is something like 4,500 miles down that way, and then the closest thing to Midway Atoll is Alaska, and that's like 2,400 miles to the north. And so of all places on Earth, if there's a place where our plastic pollution shouldn't be, that would be it. And I've been hearing these stories about plastic inside the stomachs of baby albatross on Midway Island. And there are a few photographs. I did some research, and I found a few photographs on the internet. And there are these snapshots of birds that are dead, that have decomposed, and their bodies are filled up with plastic on this incredibly remote place. And it was just so astonishing to me to see these pictures. I just couldn't quite believe it. And I wondered if the biologists and the people who were there might have enhanced these pictures a little, because it'd be really easy to do. You know, grab a few pieces of plastic and put them there. And there wasn't any discussion, and I just, as a photographer, it's, you know, the manipulation of photographs it's a constant issue and a constant question in the photographic community. And people are always getting caught for manipulating photographs because they wanted to make a point about something. And I also thought, if it's actually true that our plastic pollution is showing up in one of the remotest marine sanctuaries in the world, inside the stomachs of baby birds, that's major. That's like getting a diagnosis of cancer from your doctor. That's like really bad. Because if it's there, if it's on Midway Island, that's like your doctor saying it's in your lymph system. Because if it's there, then by implication, it's everywhere. And so I decided I was going to go there myself. Because if it's there, then there's a story there that isn't being told. And I just felt like I had to go there. And I just got back a few weeks ago. And I'm still processing the experience, as you can see. I went out for 2 weeks with a little team of artists, 2 documentary filmmakers, my wife Victoria, who's a poet, and a dear friend of mine who's Manuel Maqueda, who's an activist about oceanic plastic pollution. And today's the first time I'm going to show the photographs I took out there. They've been up on my website for a few days, but this is the first time they've been presented publicly. And it's going to be in the form of a little movie. I made a slideshow that plays by itself. And I want to ask just a couple things. For the people who are taking photographs, could you please not photograph the screen? You're welcome to use the images. They're open sourced, just to not have the distraction of clicking. And then at the end, I want to ask that you not applaud. This is not something to clap about. And whatever it is that you receive from this, whatever message you get from it, I just want to ask you to hold it yourself and don't give it back to me in the form of applause. So here we go to Midway. I've only been with these images and this experience myself for a short time, and I don't feel like I really have much more to say about it. But seems like something we should all be talking about. Thank you.